Welcome to Can We Have a Conversation? I'm your host today, Stewart Perrilliat, and I have a special guest here who is Robin Thompson-Webb, which is a Dr. Robin Thompson-Webb. And I'm saying welcome to the show.
Thank you. Thank you for having me.
We've had a lot of conversations off the screen, and I thought that this would be a really good conversation on the screen about some of the work that Man to Man does and some of the work that you do. And I just wanted to know if you could just kind of share with our guests some of the things that you do and just give a brief introduction of who you are and what you do.
I've been an educator for the last 34 years and recently retired. Back in 2015, I finished my doctorate, and my dissertation was on pregnant and parenting teens and their ability to graduate from high school. And after I finished the dissertation, my dissertation chair took me to a conference in Hawaii, and it was an opportunity for me to talk about my dissertation and present it, and got all of these questions. And then the last lady stands up and she says, okay, now that you have all of this information, what are you going to do with it? And I thought, okay. Well, time has passed, and I've actually received a 501c3 status from the IRS and written a plan to work with pregnant and parenting teens as a unit. I think it's important that we work for them or work with them as a unit, because many of the programs these days are focused on the pregnant and parenting teen mother, and they kind of leave the father out of the picture, and that sets up a situation where he can become very easily unattached from the family and the child. Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
Let me ask you, as this is a very important topic, how did you come up with this?
Well, in our lives we have recurring themes that come up. And over the years, this one theme that came up for me was young, pregnant, and parenting teens. During my years, when I was doing my BA, had a couple of friends who had children, and we became her friends, her safety net. She would go to classes, and we would keep her baby, and at the end of the day, half the time she didn't know where the baby was, because we would, pass these children back and forth. So segue to, I had gotten my BA degree, and I started teaching, and I taught kindergarten. And during the week, 2 or 3 kids might say, oh, I'm going to get to see my daddy this weekend, or oh, my granny's going to take me to see my daddy, and they would be so exuberant and happy. And then come Monday morning, I would ask them, hey, how was your trip to go see your dad, or where'd your dad take you? And they would drop their heads and say, oh, I didn't get to see him. And many times, no one even explained to them. So moving on down the line, I worked as an educator for 31 years, and 16 of those years I worked in career tech ed. And 1 year I ran an internship for about 60 alternative ed students. And to be in that program, you had to have some kind of life challenges. Some of the people were pregnant and parenting teens, of course. One of the girls had 2 children, and I had actually gone to school with her mom.
How old was she?
She was 17 at the time. And at the end of the program, we used to always have this big celebration, and the students would do a PowerPoint presentation, and their mentors would come, and it was just a really good opportunity to show what they had done. And she told me emphatically, I'm not doing it. She was very defiant, and I couldn't understand why. So I called her mom on the phone. I said, your daughter has worked all year, and she's not going to do a presentation. And she says, well, I can't do anything with her, maybe you can. So I just felt like, okay, it's not going to happen. The girl had even cursed me out. It was really kind of surprising. On the day that we did the presentation, she comes to the presentation with her mother, her 2 children, and her mentor. And when she gave her presentation, everyone stood up and gave her a standing ovation. And she was just the happiest young lady. So these recurring themes, when I got ready to start my dissertation, came back to me. And my dissertation chair said, you know what? You need to look into doing your dissertation on something that is related to pregnant and parenting teens. So voila, it was, the name of my dissertation was Pregnant and Parenting Teens, Making a Transition While Finishing High School Goals. And that was where it came from.
Wow, which is so critical today because we see a lot of teens that are pregnant in high school but never complete high school. And so I commend you on that because as we know, in Oakland, there's a 50% fail rate in high school in general. And so what is the name of your nonprofit?
So the name of my nonprofit is Raising Our Children Responsibly, and then we use the acronym R.O.C.R. What we'd like to be able to do with our nonprofit is help the teen father to stay attached to the family. The program is for both the mother and the father, whether they are in relationship or out of relationship. It's very important that these 2 individuals are able to get along well enough to help their child to develop and have a lifestyle where they can be ready for school and mentally stable in their own home. We have about 8 components that we want to focus on with the teen mother and the teen father. Career development is one of them. Reducing and preventing teen domestic violence, education, financial literacy, goal setting is a big piece of that, nutrition, definitely trying to prevent risky behaviors because, they're still young. Learning to responsibly parent their children. And the big one is avoiding those subsequent pregnancies. Let me give you a stat about that. In 2017, there were 384 teen pregnancies in Alameda County. And the statistic states that 1 out of 5 young women will have a subsequent pregnancy within 24 months of their firstborn child. And so if the number is 384, then that means that there will be a repeat pregnancy of about 74, 76 of those young ladies. And that's something that we want to try to avoid because it's hard enough with 1 child, let alone 2. I want to put an asterisk there. A couple of weeks ago, I was actually riding BART, and I got on the bus afterwards. And a young lady got on the bus after me. And she had a set of twins, and she had a lap baby. And I looked at her, and I could tell she was only about 16 or 17 years old. One of the twins was in the stroller in the front. The baby, the infant, was in the infant carrier, and she was actually walking with the other twin. And I thought to myself, wow, that's kind of a sad situation there. And those are the kinds of things that, with our program, we want to try to prevent from happening to other young women.
No, absolutely. I always say that, the father is the foundation to the family. And it's important that both parents work together. it doesn't depend on how old they are. It's a matter of that they are a parent, whether they want it to be or not. You know, it is a responsibility that they both have to share. And so it's good to hear that someone else is thinking on these grounds, because a lot of times people think that, you know, if you work in this field and you are trying to work with teens as far as parenting kids, then you're saying that it's acceptable to have kids while you're still a kid, which I disagree with. I believe that many teens are sexually active these days and do not use protection, which is the reason why they have these kids. And now that they have these kids, they haven't had great models, and so it's up to us to teach them how to be the models so that they can parent their children. So tell me about, you know, your intervention and your weekly engagement with these parents and the children. How does that work? What does a normal day look like?
Well, our program is designed for 15 to 20 couples, and the couples will come with their baby to a meeting each week. In the meeting, they will each have an hour of exercise, and that hour of exercise is really to prevent depression. One of the statistics from a journal article that I read was that the mother tends to have a lot of depression because much of the child rearing practices are placed on her shoulders. So, the first hour, the fathers will exercise, and they will be able to pick from a number of different activities like weightlifting or exercise on the basketball court, or maybe the tennis court. During that time, the mother and the child are in the curriculum piece from the 8 components that I mentioned to you. So after that first hour, they switch, and then the mother gets a chance to have her exercise, and then the father is a part of the curriculum with the child. So after those 2 hours, then they go into a communications activity where, we'll have weekly communications kind of competition games to keep them interested in coming to the program. And after that hour, then we'll go into like a 30-minute, 45-minute dinner session. And then because this is a program that is designed for the whole family, we actually have an early literacy component as well, where they will learn skills that they can use with their child so that they can do singing at home and reading at home and talking, so that the child, by the time they get to kindergarten, will be, ready, rich with a large vocabulary, and be able to start school well.
Right.
One other thing I forgot, we also want to be able to offer the family a book each week for the children, so they'll have something to be able to read to the children each week. We also want to be able to take them to all of the community college bridge days so that they can begin to see what kind of educational opportunities are out there. And during the summer, we're looking forward to them being able to participate in a paid internship.
What are the age groups that you're working with?
We're actually looking more at the high school, so more like 14 to 19. One of the things about young ladies, though, is they tend to have older partners, and so we would extend that out to a 14 to 21 if the father was interested in participating in the program.
I think this will work really well with man-to-man, because we work with 14 to 30. I think it's a wonderful thing to do what you're doing, And you don't have a lot of people working in this field. They have to be able to see it from somewhere else than what they see in the streets. If they don't know, then someone has to teach them. And it sounds like you're the one that's teaching them. I wanted to ask you, what are some of the goals that you look to be trying to accomplish in the future for your nonprofit?
Okay. I'm really interested in trying to grow the program. At this point, it would just be one small group, but eventually I would like to be able to branch out and maybe move to other counties. Right now, this one is for Alameda County because that's where I live, but I'm not opposed to, moving to other counties with the model. I want to be able to attend some of the college conferences as well as some of the different professional conferences to talk about the program, report on the statistics that we're coming up with, and then sharing best practices because this is not just an Alameda County problem. It's a problem in many places. And when I started doing my research, I found that the problem with the intervention all over, the connection has been to the female and not the male. And I think that we're doing that wrong because we see a lot of times that there will be young men that may have babies with more than one woman before they turn 19. I was reading one article and it was talking about one man started at 12, and by the time he turned 19, he had 6 children, and 4 of them they were by 4 different women. And that's something that we want to try to stop from happening.
Yeah, I actually had about 2-3 weeks ago, I was on a podcast with some people from London, and they wanted to talk to me about drugs and youth violence. And so we were having a conversation, and this is people in London that's having the same issues that you're saying that we're having here, but they don't know how to wrap their minds around it, and still having a problem with police brutality and young people being killed by the police, people of color, and they're trying to figure this out. And I had to remind them that the fatherless piece is a major factor in this conversation, which they wanted to ignore and think, blame the police and blame other things. But unless that father plays a role in, parenting that child, then you're going to have these kind of results. We're going to have chaos. We're going to have confusion. And you're right. Even to the traditional system, it's not fair when a man goes into court and he begins to try to, get some time with his child. He's not treated equally. When he speaks, they really don't want to hear what he has to say. They ask him, does he have anything to say? But the conversation is already fixed before he opens his mouth. And it doesn't make a man feel good to know that he's already defeated before he even tried. It has to be more father-friendly. It has to be able to, to be equal in the sense that this child is just as much my child as it is yours. And I have just much influence and a responsibility as the mother does, because we had to do this together. The mother couldn't have that child by herself. Father couldn't have that child by himself. There's some strengths the mother has, and there's some strengths that the father has. And that's why they're mother and father.
Yes. Yeah. I was reading an article a little while ago about the unattached father. And one of the things that the article stated is that not all of these unattached fathers are just disinterested from the beginning. It discussed how they had done a study, and so many of the men, discussed how their reason for not being attached is sometimes they have issues with the mother, but a lot of the issues come from the maternal and paternal grandparents. And, they tend to just drop out because they don't know how to get past that barrier.
Yes. It's funny you say that. It's because I actually had a show here with Dr. Michael Connor, and he and I had this exact conversation. It's like, well, what does a father do when the mother is not wanting to be engaged or have any relationship with him? And he said, well, there's other ways that you should do it. Maybe he can go to the parents of that mother, and or the father, the mother, whoever that is, and say, hey, it's not that I want to cause any chaos or confusion. I just want to spend some time with my child. Can you help that to happen? And have some people who have daughters and sons that they feel like no one's good enough for my child, and so no matter what you do will not be acceptable. And I get that, but I think we have to look a little further beyond that and see what's the best interest for the child, what's beneficial for the child. You're right. I don't believe that every man does not want to be engaged in his children's life. But I think that what happens is he gets discouraged and he gets frustrated. And then he also gets frustrated with the fact that he doesn't have the necessary tools to raise this child, which he runs away from his responsibility because of fear. Not because he doesn't want to be engaged, but just because he doesn't know how.
Exactly. And that brings me to wanting to talk about some of the outcomes for the program. One of the outcomes that we want to see is that fathers will have better parenting skills, and they will have more opportunity to be with their child if they're getting along well with the mother. Just by the mere fact that they will come to the program, they're going to get at least a 3-hour block of time with their child each week. We're also trying to encourage them to go to the library on maybe Saturdays, and or the after school time. We also want to be able to provide some family-friendly excursions for them, and the whole family will go, so that they'll get a chance then to exert their father time as well. Another one of our statistics is that we want to see both mother and father being able to read and sing with their child more often. We also want to be able to see that parents are still in school after the year. For those that are older, that they have matriculated into the community college level from high school. And we also want to see that there are no subsequent pregnancies, as well as the communication between mother and father is going great, that we don't see any teen domestic violence within the time that we're having our program.
Those are wonderful things. One of the things I wanted to ask you, because I've heard you say this a couple of times about reading, and I know that there are a lot of these young men that are illiterate and they can't read, and they're embarrassed because they don't want you to know they can't read. Are you guys working with any literacy programs to help these fathers? Or is this something that you guys are considering, to help these fathers, so they can be able to read and they feel, confident that they can read to their children?
That is a big problem. All during the years when I was teaching, I could see kids that were pushed to the next level, and they really did not have the reading skill down. They couldn't master the reading standards for that year. They, went on to the next one. My recommendation for that is that the libraries within the community usually have those literacy programs for adults, and that would be what my recommendation would be for them. In the program, we're going to have singing and early literacy, hands-on, sing kind of activity. And so this doesn't require any reading. And if a parent is able to learn the song, and, there'll be fun songs for them, then, they can sing those songs to their children. A funny thing that happened when my child was young, my daughter was young, and we would have these songs on at home, and my husband went to work one day and he was humming one of the tunes, and it was so funny. Somebody called him and said, "Oh, you know Barney too, huh?" So but that's a plus.
Yes.
Yes. That means that it's permeated.
That's right.
Our family, and so this is what we want to try to do with the early literacy program. Have those songs permeate the father's brain or the mother's brain, whoever it is, and they sing them so that the children will, be able to hear all of this rich vocabulary and then use it themselves at some point.
Absolutely. Well, we're going to take a break for now, and we're going to come back and continue this conversation. I think it's a conversation that we need to continue, because I think somebody needs to hear this conversation. They need to know that there are services provided and that we are trying to help these young men and women to be productive citizens and well-rounded parents. That they have something to provide their children with of some substance. So again, let's take a break and we'll come back and continue this conversation.
All right, thank you.